It's a clash of titans as Nepomniachtchi takes on the reigning world champion Ding Liren. We're expecting a deep theoretical battle between two of the world's absolute best, and we're off with a Roy Lopez. Nepo plays e4, Ding replies with e5, and after the knights come out we see the classic bishop to b5. This is the Spanish game, one of the oldest and most respected openings in chess. Both players are on home turf here, navigating the deep theory with confidence. Both sides develop quickly and logically. Nepo castles his king to safety, and Ding follows suit after getting his pieces into the game. The stage is set, and here, White's bishop drops back to b3. This is a very precise move. In fact, it's the only one that keeps a tangible advantage for Nepo, keeping an eye on Black's key central squares. After a few more preparatory moves, Ding Liren challenges the center with the pawn push to d5. This is the moment the game breaks open. Nepo is forced to react, and a series of trades in the center clears the board, leading to a much more dynamic position. And the trades continue. The knights meet in the center on d4, and Nepo immediately exchanges, simplifying the central tension. Ding recaptures with the pawn, landing on d4. An excellent choice, and the only move to keep the position perfectly balanced. He grabs space and keeps his structure solid. Now we enter a maneuvering phase. Both players improve their pieces, the queen swings out, the knight finds a better square, and the pawns start to challenge each other on the queen side. A quiet before the storm. Boom! Nepo shatters the calm, taking the pawn on b5. This is a brilliant pawn sacrifice. He's giving up material to rip open lines on the queen side and create a dangerous passed pawn. An incredible dynamic decision. Ding accepts the challenge, trading knights, and Nepo immediately pushes his pawn to a6. But Ding finds the only move. The knight drops back to d2. This is an absolutely critical defensive resource, holding the position together against White's mounting pressure. Fantastic calculation from the world champion, and Nepo is relentless. Another brilliant move. Queen to e2. He's offering yet another sacrifice, this time his bishop on b3, just to keep the attack flowing. Incredible attacking chess from Ian. But Ding is ice cold. He correctly accepts the sacrifice, with the knight taking the bishop on b3. This is once again the only move to maintain equality. He is walking a tightrope perfectly. Nepo recaptures with the c-pawn, taking on b3. This is the best way, keeping his pawn structure flexible and maintaining the maximum amount of pressure on Ding's position. Unbelievable! Ding answers a sacrifice with a sacrifice. Bishop to d6 is a stunning, brilliant counterblow. He gives the piece right back to untangle his own pieces and fight for the initiative. The complexity is off the charts. Nepo makes the only correct decision, capturing the bishop with his pawn on b7. He now has a monster-passed pawn just 2 squares from queening, a huge threat for the rest of the game. The game enters a phase of unbelievable tension. Ding's rook captures the pawn on b7, but White's pieces coordinate to support a new pawn roller on the queen side. Black's pieces are active, but that b-pawn is a constant headache. Both sides trade blows. A moment of calm as both players reposition their pieces for the next big fight, and Ding unleashes another brilliant move, rook to c7. This is a defensive masterpiece. It prepares to challenge White on the c-file, overprotects key squares, and shows incredible foresight. What a move. Nepo has to respond, and he forces the issue by taking the rook on c7. And Ding's queen recaptures on c7. The only move, and a perfect one, keeping his active queen in the game and holding the delicate balance of the position. White's rook and bishop now swing towards the center, increasing the pressure and probing for any weakness in Black's camp. After so much perfect play, Ding finally makes a small slip. He's trying to challenge White's control, but there was a much more precise path. The stronger try was, Ding plays bishop to d6, and this inaccuracy gives Nepo a serious chance to seize a winning advantage. And here is the golden opportunity for Nepo to capitalize. The advantage is there for the taking, but he misses the decisive blow. The winning idea was simply, bishop takes the bishop on d6. After queen recaptures on d6, the simple pawn to g3 secures the king. Following rook to c8, White's queen lands on c4 with a crushing position. But back in the actual game, Nepo pushes the pawn to g3 right away, and just like that, the advantage vanishes. The game is level once again. And now, with the chance gone, the pieces come off the board. Ding's bishop takes the bishop on f4, and after the recapture, a check on a1 forces the white king to the side. The game has simplified into a queen and rook endgame, and it's dead even. The queens and rooks dance around the board, but it's Nepo's queen that finds the target, maneuvering perfectly to snap off the weak black pawn on d4. White is up a pawn. This is a tough endgame for Ding, and under pressure he makes another inaccuracy. He needed to find the most resilient defense here. A better way to hold was queen to c6, keeping the queens on the board and creating counterplay. After king to f3, the pawn pushes to b3, then pawn to h4 and queen to c1, and black is still fighting hard. Instead, in the game, Ding pushes his pawn to f5, and this allows white to seize a clear and lasting advantage. Nepo immediately takes advantage, grabbing another pawn on b4 and setting up a decisive trade. And this is the key moment. Queen takes the queen on b7. An excellent decision from Nepo. He correctly assesses that trading into a rook and pawn endgame gives him the best chances to convert his advantage. Ding must recapture, and his rook takes the queen on b7. He's now in a difficult endgame, but he's a legendary defender. The fight is far from over. And so begins a long, technical rook endgame. Nepo's king and rook coordinate beautifully to press his advantage, cutting off black's king and creating threats. Ding defends tenaciously, trying to keep his king active and hold the fortress. The maneuvering continues, with both kings marching into the heart of the battle. Pawns are pushed, rooks are shuffled, and every move is critical. Nepo presses on c5, Ding defends on a6, and the kings face off in the center of the board. A quick check from Nepo's rook on c6, simply repositioning for the next phase of the attack. And Ding finds the only move to stay in the game. The king steps back to g7. Any other move would have lost on the spot. Incredible defense under immense pressure from the world champion. The rooks continue their intricate dance. Nepo probes with his rook on d6, then d8, trying to find a way through. Ding's rook shadows him perfectly from d2 to h1 and back again, parrying every threat and refusing to crack. Now, Nepo executes his main plan. The d-pawn begins its march up the board. It advances to d4, then d5, pushing black's king and rook back. This passed pawn is the star of the show, and Ding must find a way to stop it. The pressure mounts as the pawn reaches d6 and then all the way to d7. It's one square away from becoming a queen, forcing Ding's king into a passive position on the h-file. The situation looks desperate for black. With the d-pawn as the ultimate threat, Nepo opens up a second front, pushing his h-pawn to stretch the defense. The pawns are traded, and after a series of checks and captures, white's king gets to join the attack on h4. And now, a flurry of action. The kingside pawns are liquidated in a burst of checks and captures. Nepo's king takes on g5, Ding's rook grabs a pawn on f2, and the dust settles for one final decisive combination. And here it is. Brilliant! Rook takes the pawn on f4, Nepo sacrifices his rook to liquidate the remaining pawns and force a theoretically drawn king and pawn endgame. A beautiful and practical decision to end the fight. Ding has no choice but to accept the sacrifice. His rook takes the rook on f4, entering the endgame Nepo envisioned. And with the final move of this epic struggle, Nepo's king recaptures on f4. This is a well-known theoretical draw, and the players will soon agree. And that's it. After 131 moves of brilliant attacks, tenacious defense, and incredible complexity, this absolute marathon of a game ends in a hard-fought and well-deserved draw. What a battle.